for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they have been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamaringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the extraordinary row over fishing rights between Britain and France, after the French detained a British trawler and fined another one for allegedly illegally fishing for scallops in French waters. Routine checks were carried out off the coast of Le Havre. The owners of the detained ship say their crew was operating completely legally, but the French say a post-Brexit trade dispute over fishing licences requires resolution by the beginning of next month, or they will bar British boats from some French ports. Jonathan Miller, a columnist with the UK magazine The Spectator, says there's a domestic political aspect to the French behaviour.
This is an extraordinary episode in a bigger thing, which is the re-election of Emmanuel Macron. He's gone into this kind of hissy fit diplomacy, this tantrum diplomacy. He's currently having rows with the Algerians, the Australians, the Americans, the British, the Swiss, and now he's kind of absurdly going over to war over a few scallops, or as the French call them, coquilles Saint-Jacques.
Indeed they do, but whatever you call them, there is a growing battle over them, and the British government says France's threats are disappointing and disproportionate, while the French say the British are pushing too hard to test the patience of Paris. The main news again, President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised to drop all public engagements and rest for 2 more weeks, and the EU has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over a sexual abuse scandal. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Apparently oblivious of the dismal fiscal climate, local dog Digby is wolfing down kibble as if the United States isn't in a goddamn economic crisis. Sources say the shockingly selfish 4-year-old German Shepherd appears callously unswayed by the constant stream of gloomy market forecasts and continues gorging on brand-name pet foods, milk bones, and table scraps as if the U.S. unemployment rate hasn't been above 8% for the past 3 years.
Here we are tightening our belts while this dog scarfs down bowl after bowl like the Dow Jones Industrial Average has gone through the goddamn roof or something. You'd think that he'd think twice since U.S. credit rating's been downgraded, but Digby doesn't give a damn. Ain't that right, Digby? You don't give a flying f***, do you?
The Onion solemnly bids farewell to the 22 crew members who perished during the production of today's Week in Review. You will be missed. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, the Alien Invasion edition of the show. Welcome to it. You can join us here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Those of you on the radio listening, which is probably 99% of our audience, and listening on various different forms of audio, don't know, Bonnie and I, we dressed up a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but
I already did your hair radioactive.
You did. And then you added these, what do you call them, alien glasses, I guess?
Alien sunglasses, gray shaped.
And you've got some alien antenna on yourself.
Yes.
So if you're watching us on the cam feed, you could do that over at watch.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right to the feed on Odyssey. You will see that, and I think you're going to have an even more, I guess, serious outfit coming up on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
As I understand it.
It's pretty serious.
Because it is Halloween. Sunday will be the Halloween episode of Free Talk Live, and you're going all out. I don't think we should say what you're going to be at this point, but you've got it planned. You gave me a sneak peek earlier today, and it looks great.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Stuff in the news. Bonnie, I know you want to talk about independence. New Hampshire and otherwise, other states perhaps being independent. The Mises Institute has a story about that. Just a couple of interesting headlines. I don't want to focus too much on this, but I think it's worth mentioning that apparently now the FDA has gone ahead and authorized the COVID-19 vaccination for children ages 5 to 11.
Was that today?
That happened today. And according to the story at abcnews.com, it now has to go to the CDC for approval, and of course, it's expected to get approval from the CDC. So this is pretty much a done deal.
Well, now moms that are walking around without masks can finally take the masks off their 5-year-olds.
Yeah, sadly, we've actually seen this happening in real life, and it's just so sad.
I got vaccinated, sweetie. That's why I don't have my mask on.
Yeah,
you aren't at risk for anything, but you have to wear a mask.
Yeah, and they're highly unlikely to actually have any kind of serious consequences from contracting COVID, but who knows what kind of consequences they're going to get from this vaccine. That, to me, seems like a really bad plan, but some of these parents want this. In fact, there's some parents who are complaining online about New Hampshire being the first, maybe, the only thus far state to reject $27 million in COVID vaccination, basically bribe money from the federal government. That happened a couple of weeks ago, but they're still complaining about it online now because they want the New Hampshire state government to have all this money with which to foist more vaccines on children specifically.
I don't see why vaccines are so expensive that if somebody wants one, they can't just pay for their own vaccine. It's like a one-time shot, maybe a two-time shot.
Yeah, I don't know what they actually cost. I've obviously never looked into it because I have no interest.
Probably not unaffordable for the average person when there's flu shots every single year that people get.
Right. Well, I mean, look, if it's supposedly a method of saving yourself from this certain death, the doom of COVID-19, then it would be worth, a couple $100.
Sorry, I'm buying my flat screen TV. I can't save myself from the ultra deadly coronavirus that I'm terrified of.
Yeah. So anyway, that's happening. Now they're going to be forcing this thing on unwitting children who, look, I mean, they can't make decisions like this for themselves, so they're unfortunately going to be subjected to this by these cowardly parents. In fact, I made a statement to one of them on Twitter today saying, hey, look, she was complaining that, tens of thousands of parents in New Hampshire are upset because they can't get this vaccine with government assistance. And I said, look, if there's tens of thousands of parents who are so afraid of a disease or an infection that has a 99.8% survivability rate, and it's probably 99.999% when it comes to children, then they don't belong in New Hampshire. They don't belong in the live free or die state, and they should move out. They should go to Massachusetts. They should go to Vermont or New York. Go somewhere where they're welcome.
Yeah, go somewhere where the government is fine with taking money from the government to give them vaccines that they should be able to pay for by themselves, with strings attached.
Yeah, and then they'll have a lifestyle that they want, which is obviously having the government take care of them from cradle to grave and we're not interested. A lot of the people of New Hampshire, the natives here, certainly the Free Staters, the people that have come in here to, be active for liberty, it's not the lifestyle that we want. And, we ought to have a place for libertarians. We ought to have a place for people who actually believe in freedom, and I think that New Hampshire is that place. We'll talk more about independence here in a moment. There's also another...
Well, speaking of forcing this crap on kids, somebody said something that really got me thinking in a positive way. It was on on Tom Woods' show, and I'm not sure who his guest was. I just heard it on the radio in the kitchen. The guest said he had been thinking, man, the punk rock scene in like 20 years is going to be crazy, because imagine all the kids who actually do realize when they get older, like, wait, they really forced all this crap on us that was so unnecessary. They really traumatized us, and it was so scary, and like our first years of life were really, controlled and...
So he's suggesting that there's going to be pushback.
Blowback, yeah.
I think that's probably likely. I think you're going to see... And we already, might have seen some of this with people maybe acting a little bit more dangerously as a result of once they've been able to kind of get out and get around people again, maybe taking more risks, sort of a roaring 20s again, if you will, kind of like the 1920s, but the newer version of that. I think some people had predicted this.
I don't know if I see that in real life.
Well, there have been a lot of people going to massive concerts that in those places where they're allowed to be held. There have been tens of thousands of people that have been in close proximity to one another and taking those risks. And, who knows what that's doing as far as people acting out in maybe a more dangerous sexual manner or whatever. Because people that are separated from other humanity are more likely to take advantage of those opportunities when they're able to come back together. So I think that some people have predicted this, and I don't think it's unbelievable that could absolutely be the case. So if you want to join us here, the number is 603-283-6160. Although that said, these kids are going to be pretty effed up because they've been raised or being raised in a society in which, as we reported earlier this week in Toronto, they can't even speak at the lunch table at the government schools. They are raised around all these adults who are wearing masks constantly and forcing their friends to wear masks, which takes away all of the, humanity and the ability to see facial expressions, which is an important nonverbal method of communication. So, I mean, what that's going to do to these kids has yet to be seen. We've never had a social experiment like this, which I think is absolutely horrifying. And they haven't even begun injecting them with these vaccines yet. That's happening next. I mean, they're doing it to teenagers, but they haven't done it yet to the 5 to 11-year-olds, and they're rolling that out just in time for Christmas. So how many of these kids are going to come up with some sort of horrifying potentially vaccine-related side effects? And what's that going to do to their Christmas holiday?
Well, I see what you're saying, this year. Oh.
Yeah, they're rolling it out ASAP. This has approval as of today. The FDA is expected, or the CDC is expected to approve it as soon as, next week.
Well, according to VAERS, the voluntary reporting system for vaccine injuries and deaths, I think, this is the most dangerous vaccine that's ever been put on market.
That's true. And the VAERS numbers are underreported.
Yeah.
Because we know that nurses are choosing in a lot of cases not to report, either because they're under orders by their bosses to not report, or simply because it's too much of a burden. It takes a half an hour just to fill out one of those forms, and they're too busy. So you can't blame them for that. In other news, the vaccine, according to, thehill.com, vaccinated people are just as likely to spread the Delta variant within their household as people who are unvaccinated. So according to a recent study, people who have received COVID-19 vaccinations are just as, likely to carry this thing, to spread COVID-19 as anybody who's unvaccinated. So what is the point?
There is none.
No, there really isn't. And it's all about running numbers, getting billions of dollars funneled into these companies, these corporations. It's all about obedience. It's all about getting people these vaccine passports, which will restrict access to society to two groups. It'll be the restricted group, the unvaccinated, and the unrestricted or less restricted group of the vaccinated. At least there's a little bit of good news. Ice Cube is saying no to a movie He's leaving $9 million on the table, saying no because they want him to be vaccinated to be on the movie staff. More coming up.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Want to say thanks to Big G, who is a Free Talk Live silver amplifier, supporting the new amps Patreon that we launched, I don't know, a couple weeks ago at this point, maybe a week or so ago, over at amps.freetalklive.com. They'll take you right to our Patreon page. We had to blow up the old website and launch a new one, and that meant we had to blow up the old AMP program, sadly, so we're launching a new one via Patreon. If Patreon had existed when we launched AMP in 2005, I probably would have gone that direction. Yes, it is a centralized system. I understand that, but so is our old system because we do credit card payments, and anytime you're using credit card processors, there's a chance they're going to cut you off. I spoke with the old credit card processor this week and found out they actually closed our account. So it wasn't just that they denied you, Bonnie, because we had tried to get you as a signer on, like we were trying to kind of rescue the old system, see if we could, because my bank account closed my account. My last domestic bank account got closed. And so we tried to put you on as the signer on the account. They rejected that, said, oh, you need to talk to the risk department. Well, when I called risk, they said we've closed your account due to risk of fraud.
Let's tell this whole entire story anytime somebody says Bitcoin is too complicated.
Yeah, right. This has been a months-long process of just trying to get this credit card system back up and running, and it's just not even an option with this merchant provider, which we've used for like a decade. So it's not like we're some, new kids on the block that never has used this company before.
That they know nothing about.
Yeah, they've had us as customers for like 10 years at least, if not longer. And we've never had any kind of issue. There's never been none of the amplifiers have ever said, I want my money back. You guys scammed me. That's never, ever happened. So to my knowledge, there's never been a single complaint, but yet they said we're a risk of fraud. So I don't know, maybe the FBI might have something to do with this, but that's pure speculation because when I asked them for any details, they refused to say anything. So, anytime you're dealing with credit card processing, there is no decentralized credit card processor. So we have to use something centralized, and so Patreon's just as good as anybody else. So that's where we're going for right now. If you want to join the AMPS Patreon like Big G, you can do that over at amps.freetalklive.com and help us do Free Talk Live. Help us advertise, market, promote, and support.
Wow, I didn't know
Live.
God was an amplifier.
Big G. Thanks, Big G. So Ian and Bonnie here in the studio tonight. Of course, you can bring up whatever you want. I was just starting out with just a few headlines, basically, that the FDA has now authorized vaccines for kids. So that's a thing now. That's coming very, very soon. You're being facetious. And but the good news is Ice Cube has backed out of a $9 million comedy role with Sony's upcoming Oh Hell No, co-starring Jack Black, had been set to shoot this winter in Hawaii, but Ice Cube walked away. According to a report here at The Hollywood Reporter, the producers of the film told him that he'll be able to work on the film as long as he gets vaccinated. And he said, oh, hell no.
Nice.
And took a walk and turned away apparently $9 million for this. And he's not the only person out there. There's been some fairly major sports stars. I mean, I don't pay attention to sports, so I don't know who they all are. I can't name any of them off, but there's been some sports stars. There's been a few musicians and comedians who...
I know Diddy. Wait, P. Diddy?
P. Diddy?
Remember he was the one that was saying, I want to see your face, right?
No, I think you're thinking of
50
Busta Rhymes.
Okay, yeah.
It was Busta Rhymes who... I know for a fact Busta Rhymes, because I've seen a video clip of him on stage just trashing the masks.
He was the one saying, I want to see your face when you walk up to me so I know
Right.
if you're a friend,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's true. I mean, it's a really good observation because that's what the whole idea of humans being able to smile at each other is supposed to show. It's when you smile at somebody, it suggests that you might not be a threat, that maybe you're a friendly person. And that has been completely taken away by this mask insanity that's out there. So kudos to Ice Cube in this story for standing up for this, and to anybody, not just the big stars, but to the people who are the nurses, to the people who are working in fast food or wherever it is that these mandates have been coming down, and you're being told you have to get some sort of experimental vaccination. And I'm sorry, I don't care if the FDA has approved it. I still consider it to be experimental, and that you are the person.
You consider it that because that's the definition of experimental. Just came out. Nobody knows what could happen to somebody who takes it long term, so it's experimental.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't just change the definition and say it's not experimental because the FDA approved it.
And that's totally true because look, there is no such thing as a long-term study on these vaccines. Whereas with like measles or mumps or, whatever the normal ones that people have been getting for decades, okay, there's decades of work behind this. There's decades of trials and attempts and people taking it, and whatever the side effects are generally fairly well known. This, we have no idea. We're only, just starting out, and there's, as you pointed out, Bonnie, a ton of vaccine-related side effects and death that have occurred. Yeah, in this voluntary system. So once again, kudos to Ice Cube for that. So again, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on that news. I just thought there were pretty important headlines, so I wanted to get the news out about it. Bonnie, I know you wanted to talk about independence here tonight. It's been in the news. Last night we discussed the study that showed 68% of New Hampshire voters are in favor of, not in favor of secession. That wasn't asked. They believe the U.S. is on the wrong track.
Which I think is too low of a number. How could you possibly look at what the federal government is doing with our money, just one small facet with our money, and think that the government or the United States is not on the wrong track? 68% is too low.
Well, there's the partisan reality that whatever party's in the halls of power in D.C., its members are going to buy in to whatever they're selling. So if the Democrats are in power... Yeah, if the Democrats are in power, then Democrats are in favor of war. If the Republicans are going to war, all of a sudden the Democrats are anti-war. And if the Republicans are in favor, then, the Republicans, they're increasing the size of government and, no one seems to care. Whereas when the Republicans are out of favor, then they're all about small government. Yeah. And their followers buy into whatever it is that they're saying. So, of course, there's a demographic breakdown on this story, and we touched on it yesterday, but there was a little bit I wanted to add because I actually had a chance to look at the study tonight. It was just kind of going on the mainstream media reports. I looked at the actual study today, and there's more details on demographics. What's interesting here is that 73% of 18 to 34-year-olds say that the country's on the wrong track.
Interesting.
Yeah, so more than the average, which was 68%, was the overall number for New Hampshire. 73% of 18 to 34-year-olds and 70% of 35 to 54-year-olds.
So it's only the old people dragging it down.
Correct. Old people, 55 to 64, it was 67%, and then 63% of 65 plus. So
I don't want anything to change. I think we're just fine.
Well, I'm old. The good news is, Bonnie, those people are going to pass away at some point. And then the younger people who are in favor of more of them, by the way, and you've got a story about independence and secession coming up here. And in that story, it mentions studies that have very similar results for young people and specifically asking about secession. Young people are more interested and supportive of secession as well. And we'll share that with you coming up here in moments. You can join us. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Meeting President Emmanuel Macron in Rome ahead of the G20 summit, the president indicated that he believed the French had been given fair warning that their agreement with Australia was about to be ripped up. He spoke off microphone in response to a reporter's question.
I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that they would not be true. I honestly God would not tell you right now.
The White House has not disclosed who the president believed had given the information to France, nor whether it was a member of his own senior team. The President's Day began with a 90-minute Vatican meeting with Pope Francis. Climate change was high on the agenda. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised by her doctors to rest for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they have been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamaringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about a favorite topic of mine. I don't know about you, Bonnie.
Mine too.
Independence. In fact, you're wearing the It's Not You, It's Me Independence t-shirt here tonight. The I guess it's a hoodie. The NH Exit hoodie, which cool libertarian artist named Top Lobster came up with. And I like it. It shows the United States, like an image and sort of like outline image of the U.S., and then there's like a little white carve-out, if you will, where New Hampshire is on that particular map, and then there's New Hampshire sort of set aside from that. It says, it's not you, it's me, and it's a pretty cool little design, so we ordered some hoodies, matching hoodies, for you and I.
Yep, but you took yours off because you didn't want to match me.
It's too warm in here tonight, but I appreciate you wearing it, and I've already gotten one compliment about it. If you want to order the same hoodie, you can. There's a link over at nhexit.us. You probably have to scroll down a little ways before you find the article about it, but there is a link there to those hoodies. And there's t-shirt versions, and for those of you who aren't living in New Hampshire, where it's not cold, if you want to support New Hampshire independence without living here, I guess you could order one if you wanted. Go to nhexit.us. And that's where I'm sharing some interesting numbers that I didn't have last night when we were talking about the 68% of registered voters in New Hampshire in a scientific poll by St. Anselm College, who said that the country's on the wrong track. I didn't have the details showing that actually younger voters are more likely than older voters to say the country's on a wrong track. I did mention that Republicans are 95% saying the country's on the wrong track in New Hampshire. 74% of undeclared voters say the country's on the wrong track, and that's really important because undeclared voters are the plurality of New Hampshire voters. Now, for those that don't know, a plurality means that they are not the majority, but there's more undeclared voters than there are Republican voters. and there's more undeclared voters than there are Democratic voters. In fact, I've got the statistics just in case you might be curious. 28.16% of the registered voters in New Hampshire are Democratic Party. 30.46% are Republican Party. And 41.16%, so over 40% of the voters are unaffiliated, or what they call undeclared.
So we're a purple state.
You could call it that. I like to think we're a golden state, more the libertarian state. And certainly as more freedom-loving people come here, then it's going to become more and more pronounced. The people who hate freedom, the people who love the state, they're freaking out over what is happening here.
And, you know, I was thinking about this recently because of all the stuff people have been saying to you on Twitter. I've been thinking about the fact that the people who just lived here their whole lives, were born here, their parents were born here, it's like 95% white people. It's not like they own New Hampshire. Obviously, they kicked out the native people who lived here.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just think that they can't move. I couldn't possibly move now that the culture is changing in New Hampshire into something I'm very against. I just think that's a crazy way of thinking when you're not even like the native people who lived here.
Yeah, a lot of the people who are the statists in New Hampshire are actually not natives. They came from somewhere else. And they can go back to somewhere else.
It's just, I always see, like, I'm from here. I mean, like, you don't own the land. And if it's changing, it's changing.
Yeah, and if don't you want to be happy?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example here. I sort of mentioned it on the air, but I didn't specifically say what this person said. Her name is Caitlin Rollo, and she's at Caitlin with a C, Caitlin Rollo on Twitter. She's responding to the news that a guy from the Union Leader reporter posted on, he tweeted this. He said, New Hampshire House Majority Leader Jason Osborne, who's a Free Stater, by the way. There's an actual Free Stater who's the majority leader of the New Hampshire House, which is an amazing success story for politics, right?
And a former Free Talk Live.
Longtime Free Talk Live supporter, an advertiser. He said, quote, "It's insulting that Washington believes Granite Staters are not informed enough to make their own healthcare decisions and oppose this chaotic administration and authoritarian repression."
Nice.
So that's what he was saying, I presume, about the vaccine mandates and such. Yeah, maybe the FDA vote.
Yeah, I think it's the vote because, no, not the FDA vote. I think it sounds to me like he's talking about that New Hampshire voted 4-1, I think.
The Executive Council.
Yeah,
in that case.
They voted to not take $27 million from the federal government. The reason I think that is because most of that money was going to go towards propaganda campaigns to educate people so they'll get vaccinated. So propagandize people to take an experimental shot.
Yep, and so this Caitlin Rollo responds saying, "Meanwhile, tens of thousands of parents in New Hampshire are wondering if their kids will have timely access to vaccines due to the chaos created in all of our communities by the New Hampshire GOP Governor, Council, Senate, House, and Majority Leader Osborne's Free Stater friends. Hashtag NHPolitics."
Where'd she get that number, tens of thousands, anyway?
Who knows?
They don't come out and protest, ever.
Of course not. There probably are tens of thousands of liberal, hard-left Democrat parents in New Hampshire. But there's 1.4 million people living here, right? So, like, even tens of thousands isn't a whole lot of people. And so I said, people who are so cowardly they can't face down an infection with a 99.8% survivability rate don't belong in the Granite State. Massachusetts, Vermont, and New York will take them all. And she writes back, she says, "Perfect snippet of the extremist Free Stater mentality of which Representatives Osborne, Edwards, McGuire, Sylvia, Abramson, Ammon, etc. are all part of. They all moved here with a nefarious political agenda and are now telling those of us that don't agree to move. Hashtag NHPolitics."
Why would you want to stay?
And that's the thing.
If you hate it so much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. New Hampshire's a pretty place. There's no doubt. Like, you've acknowledged you think that New Hampshire is a very beautiful place. Bonnie, you told me that you think it's prettier than anywhere else you've lived.
It has a way prettier fall.
It's gorgeous, and the spring's absolutely splendid.
Utah is so beautiful, but it just turns gray and dreary in the fall.
Well, it's going to turn gray here in the wintertime, but...
yeah, but it's not, like, literally 8 months of the year.
True. And I think winter's got its own beauty, personally. But, look, lady, if you want to keep the New England beauty in your life, just move to Vermont. It's not that different, It's actually, Vermont was part of New Hampshire at one time, and I believe it seceded from New Hampshire, if I recall correctly, like way, way back. So if you want a more hard left place, Vermont is the place to go. If you want even more government in your life, get down to Massachusetts. And if you want a total empire to take care of you from, cradle to grave, New York is just a couple hours to the west. So all of those places, people like this woman would be much happier. So I do hope that she ends up going there. So another couple interesting points here about the people that are saying in a recent study that was conducted, by the way, in October. So just within the last week or so, that this study was done on 1,323 New Hampshire registered voters. 68% of them said the country's on the wrong track. Younger voters are more likely to say the wrong track, and also more likely to say wrong track were those with less than a college education. So if you are college indoctrinated, if you've been to these government-run indoctrination camps all the way through graduate school, well, then only 58% say that the government or the U.S. is on the wrong track. Regular college graduates after a 4-year college graduation, 67% say wrong track. Those who've had some college, like me, I've been to an associate's degree or less, 72% of those people. And if all you've had is a high school or less education in your New Hampshire voter, 76% say the country's on the wrong track. So people who are less quote-unquote educated, less indoctrinated by the government system, are more likely to see things as being amiss.
It's interesting because it seems like the people who go all the way with it, it's like the true believers wearing 3 masks on their face, getting a what did you call it, after 4 years degree?
Oh, graduate.
Graduate
Well, no,
degree.
I guess that's not. Graduate's like, what, 6 years or something? I don't even know.
Yeah, after 4 years.
Yeah. So if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160 is the number. There's been actually a couple interesting comments in the chats. I want to share a couple of those coming up, and then we'll get into your story, Bonnie, which is about independence. And get the Mises Institute is weighing in, one of the kind of very libertarian think tanks out there. We'll jump into that coming up here. This is Free Talk Live.
If you're David, a few well-chosen words can help level the playing field with Goliath. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com. Recently, I saw a Yellow Pages ad for an appliance repair company, and the headline read, "Why wait for Sears?" If you're going to the Yellow Pages, the Dead Sea Scrolls of advertising, you're ready to buy right now. So this is an attention-grabbing message. And how about the plumber whose radio ad says, "Call by noon Thursday, and we'll be there Saturday at no extra cost"? Smart guy. Most plumbing firms give their crew the weekend off. This one gives them Sunday and Monday off. In the words of a respected advertising executive, cut to the chase, make it quick, and tell me exactly what you can do for me, especially if you're looking for work. For more tips on critical communication skills for the way things are now, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
The DEA doesn't dabble with users. They go after the big dogs.
Yeah, and I'm certain they have dabbled with users, and they would if they thought they could get something. They would if they thought they could get somewhere with it.
Maybe a user who's snorting 3 pounds a week, something where they could actually connect to a player.
Yeah.
But most users are just buying from other users. I mean, in the cocaine world, when you are a user, you've got to support your habits somehow.
Right.
And if you're not willing to go and knock over convenience stores and break into people's cars and hurt people to get the cash for your habit, then the only other choice for you, if you're not wealthy, is to sell cocaine to others.
Right.
And so most people will go and pick up whatever amount of coke they do, and then they'll sell to certain specific people who are their friends. Like he was saying, he was selling to his neighbor across the street. The DEA is not going to mess with that.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. Joining you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we're brought to you by Bitcoin.com. Great source to learn about cryptocurrency. You can go there and click on Get Started at the top of the page. And then you'll learn about stuff. You can spend, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, as much time as you want. And if you've only got a few minutes, just watch that first video and you'll get the basics down about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, two of the more important cryptos out there for you to learn about. And you'll learn about what makes cryptocurrency like Bitcoin important, what makes it special, what makes it unique, what makes it this financially important technology that has changed the face of finance permanently. Why? Go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started, and start the process of learning about cryptocurrency. It's not too late. It's definitely not too late. This tech is going to be with us for a very long time. And you can also get the latest news headlines over at Bitcoin.com. They've got a great news site updated daily with fresh stories from across the world. Go to news.bitcoin.com. That's news.bitcoin.com. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. Then Bonnie will be sharing with us more about independence and secession from the Mises Institute. But first, Robert's on the line in Vermont. You're on Free Talk Live, Robert.
Hey, Bonnie. Hi, Ian.
Hey.
How you guys doing?
Hey, Robert.
Good.
What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Ian. I love your new Duke.
Hey, thanks, man.
Hey, so wanted to bring in some breaking news. Video I saw today that came out on YouTube. Our friends at Press NH was over in Charlestown, New Hampshire the other day, and he was in the town hall office, and he was getting a request for some information, and the janitor inside the building there grabbed him and threw him out the street.
Wait,
Wow.
where was this? New Hampshire?
Charlestown, New Hampshire.
Oh.
Yeah, which is about 25 miles away from you guys. Yeah, I mean, it was like, wow, I was shocked. I mean, this is the second time that this has happened to this guy. It happened to him up in Maine about 2 months ago, where he was grabbed and thrown off property.
Well, that just brings new life to the fact that we're always saying everyone down to the dog catcher who joins the government wants to have power. Normally is the type of person that, wants power over other people. The janitor at the courthouse will physically assault someone and throw them out.
And get away with it.
I
mean, guarantee you that janitor was not arrested by the police for doing that.
No, but he wasn't arrested by the police because the police said that, well, we didn't see it happen.
Even though it's on video, right?
But if you got it on video,
Yeah.
then yeah, we want to see this. But if I went into Keene, New Hampshire, Monday morning, and I went up to the mayor's office and I grabbed him, by the neck, they'd be all over me.
Oh yeah.
You might get shot.
You'd get felony if you if you survived it, you'd be getting a
If
felony
I
charge.
survived,
Yeah.
But yet, this guy, was not arrested for what he did. I mean, it's you can see that it's one-sided.
Sure. And this guy has been targeted in a lot of cases. You're referring to a guy named Press NH Now. That's his YouTube channel. And he is one of these First Amendment auditors, like our co-host Joa from Breaking the Flaw. They both do kind of similar things where they go to town halls and or other supposedly public functions or public places, and they just walk around with a video camera just to see how these bureaucrats will handle it. Rob, thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate hearing from you. The number, if you want to join us, is 603-283-6160. I wish him the best. I appreciate people like this. I mean, it's particularly ballsy to go alone. Like, if I know somebody is going to go and video record at a government facility, I want to go with them. I want to be there to back them up. I mean, I'm tethered to my house right now, so I can't do it personally. But Bonnie, you've gone, I think, to do this on at least one occasion. Aria, for instance, wanted to go somewhere, and I don't think you ended up going on that one, but
Didn't end up happening. I went with Lumpy.
That's right. Yeah, and that video has yet to be released, but at some point we will put it out there, and it's pretty entertaining. But when Lumpy went, who's one of our callers here to Free Talk Live, he went down to the City Hall in Keene, New Hampshire. Not only were you backing him up, but he had at least 2 other people. So I think there were 4 of you, maybe 5, that went into that office.
There were 5 of us.
Yeah, and at least 2 of you had video cameras going. So the more people that can witness the behavior of these people, the better. The more likely you are to be safe. If you're all alone in a situation like this, like these First Amendment auditors are, then you are at a more severe risk. So
I'd say that most of the time the First Amendment auditors' videos serve to show that it's not public buildings, it's government-owned buildings.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good point of clarification, Bonnie, because the government gang likes to use the word public as sort of a euphemism to when they're really talking about themselves. They use the word public to make it sound like they're being inclusive. Oh, this is a public meeting, or this is a public, it's for the public health.
Why do you pay for this? Oh, because it's for the public.
It's a public good. And the reality is they're talking about what the government thinks is good, or what the government thinks should be, is healthy.
Or a place that only the government goons are allowed to do anything or have full access to their rights.
Exactly. So check out this guy. He's Press NH Now. The best thing you can do is, go follow him on whatever platforms he's on. He's definitely on YouTube. Maybe, I don't know if he's on Odyssey yet. I know Joa, who's our co-host, is also on both of those platforms. So check them out.
At Breaking the Flaw.
At Breaking the Flaw. They do amazing work. I'm glad they're here in New Hampshire. The more of these guys, the better. But I wish that... And the thing is, they're so busy, they just go out and do this almost every day. So it would be hard, to gather a crowd of people on a daily basis, right? This is basically their job. This earns them some level of revenue. They get some level of support from the channel and the, advertising revenue or donations from their viewers. So obviously it's going to be hard to find, 3 to 5 people to tag along with them because you don't have enough money to pay them, and it's not going to be their full-time job. But that said, I think the more these guys can get back up, the better, and they really should put it out there as far as when they're going to do these things. They should at least announce it, I think. I mean, I realize that that avoids the surprise of just showing up, but if they just put the word out like, hey, I'm going to go to the Keene City Hall on Tuesday at noon, come on out if you want to back me up. And then at least if there's an arrest, and that does happen to these guys, then there's somebody there to record it. There's somebody there to send out the word as soon as possible about it. That's just my suggestion. They obviously can decide how to handle this stuff. So we were talking about independence, and there were some interesting comments in our chat rooms. We're streaming on multiple video platforms. For the moment, we're on YouTube until they take us down again. We're on DLive. We're on Twitch. And one of our DLive commenters, Ocean Beach Bum, says, as a Californian, I want to effing secede. If we secede, can we go to war with other states?
Does he want to?
That's why I said is, why would you want to do that?
Yeah, we're already in enough wars if you just stay in the Union.
So the answer, I think, the more specific answer to that question, though, Bonnie, is the reason why you wouldn't want to go to war, even if you think war is a good idea, which I think is terrifying if that's actually what you believe. Like, why would you want to go and exterminate other humans on the planet? I think it's sick. But even if you think war is a good idea, if you don't have fiat currency, then you really can't easily go to war. It would be very, very difficult for the state of California to just go to war because they don't have the printing press right now. Now, maybe they would.
Plus, they don't have enough water to give to all of their citizens. I don't know why it is, but California relies on other states to have enough water.
That's true.
Yeah,
they do pipe it in from elsewhere.
So why would you want to go to war with other states when they can turn your water off?
That's a good point. Maybe they wouldn't go to war with their neighbors. The same chatter says we should take down New York, the epicenter of corruption. So, again, it's very expensive
Pretty
to
sure
go to war.
D.C. is the epicenter of corruption.
Well, that much is true. But if D.C. were to completely be, gone, and like if the U.S. were to break up, or when the U.S. breaks up, then D.C. won't be what it is today. Won't have the same power. And New York likely will still be an absolute hellscape for people that,
Or just let people who don't like freedom live their own lives in New York and do whatever you want to do in California.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to break this to you, but New York and California ain't that different.
Yeah.
New York is number 50 on the Freedom in the 50 States chart, and California is number 49 as far as the least free places in the United States. But look, war is very expensive. Not only do you have to have the bombers and the tanks and all that, but you have to keep paying people and buying more bombs and more, explosives and things like that.
Wouldn't it be better to just live your own peaceful life anyway?
I agree there, but you really can't afford to go to war unless you have fiat currency where you can just print endlessly. Because then if you don't have fiat currency, you have to tax people to go to war, and I don't think your neighbors are going to want to support that. More coming up.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Meeting President Emmanuel Macron in Rome ahead of the G20 summit, the president indicated that he believed the French had been given fair warning that their agreement with Australia was about to be ripped up. He spoke off microphone in response to a reporter's question.
I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that they were not going to. I honestly thought they were not going to.
The White House has not disclosed who the president believed had given the information to France, nor whether it was a member of his own senior team. The president's day began with a 90-minute Vatican meeting with Pope Francis. Climate change was high on the agenda. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised by her doctors to rest for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they've been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamaringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the extraordinary row over fishing rights between Britain and France, after the French detained a British trawler and fined another one for allegedly illegally fishing for scallops in French waters. Routine checks were carried out off the coast of Le Havre. The owners of the detained ship say their crew was operating completely legally, but the French say a post-Brexit trade dispute over fishing licences requires resolution by the beginning of next month, or they will bar British boats from some French ports. Jonathan Miller, a columnist with the UK magazine The Spectator, says there's a domestic political aspect to the French behaviour.
This is an extraordinary episode in a bigger thing, which is the re-election of Emmanuel Macron. He's gone into this kind of hissy fit diplomacy, this tantrum diplomacy. He's currently having rows with the Algerians, the Australians, the Americans, the British, the Swiss, and now he's kind of absurdly going over to war over a few scallops, or as the French call them, coquilles Saint-Jacques.
Indeed they do, but whatever you call them, there is a growing battle over them, and the British government says France's threats are disappointing and disproportionate, while the French say the British are pushing too hard to test the patience of Paris. The main news again, President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised to drop all public engagements and rest for 2 more weeks, and the EU has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over a sexual abuse scandal. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A local man treats his girlfriend to a sumptuous 20-second massage, and an area desk doesn't mind if people sit on it like a chair every once in a while. This is The Onion Week in Review. Following months of anticipation and global fanfare, the royal baby was finally born this week. Sources close to the royal family say the newborn prince spent his first days crawling around Buckingham Palace, eating his first meal, and even speaking his first words. The Onion has obtained this exclusive audio clip. In other news, a man's annual 6-sentence conversation with his cousin goes smoothly, a generous improv troupe performs for free, and a pool owner has a bathing suit that touched his penis you can borrow.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. Open phones here if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
Of course, you can take control of the airwaves, bring up what you want. Coming up, Austin, Texas. Someplace you've spent a little bit of time. Bonnie used to live in Texas, not in Austin.
Spent a pretty good amount of time there, but I swore off ever going there again in 2020.
Well, they recently killed a man for not mowing his lawn, and we can tell you that story on the way here. But I know you had a story from the Mises Institute about secession, about independence becoming more and more relevant nowadays, and so we're going to get into that story as well. But first, to your phone calls and thoughts. First up, we got Keith. He's calling us from Canada. Keith, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Ian, Bonnie, how are you tonight?
Hey, what's on your mind, Keith?
Well, I caught your feed on Odyssey, and
thanks.
Actually, I've been listening to you guys, well, your network for a long time, and that was, I think, with Mark Stevens, if you remember him.
Oh, very well, yes. Mark Stevens, the author of Adventures in Legal Land, former host of the show called No State Project.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's right. I'd like to say those antenna accentuate Bonnie's eyes.
Oh, thank you.
That's very sweet.
No, you caught me on the voting part and the state.
Voting part? Date? What do you mean?
Well, the state.
The state.
You're voting. You're voting for, I don't want to say anything bad, but your slave master. I know New Hampshire is quite a free state, even though I'm up in Canada. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of New Hampshire is lovely and beautiful, but I think we have to be careful of where, government's another religion. And
absolutely it is.
Right. And we have to be careful of, where you state freedom and government. I think there's a conflict there.
Of course. I mean, to govern means to control. And so wherever there is government, wherever there is the state, then you don't have freedom. And obviously people who believe in voluntarism, that is to say that all human interaction should be consensual or voluntary, as I do, don't believe in the idea of government. And so, I mean, ideally, we should be able to get rid of the state entirely at some point. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. Our neighbors are not yet ready to accept that particular idea. I don't think we can push it quite that far. We don't have enough libertarian, voluntarist, anarchist types in one place to even make that reality possible. It's not even on the horizon yet of possibilities. But what is possible, I think, right now within the realm of possibility is secession, is a governmental area, a jurisdiction, political jurisdiction, declaring independence from a larger political jurisdiction and giving those people within it that much more say, that much more control over this particular terrifying concept known as the state.
Yeah, I don't even think just living in a free state of New Hampshire would be the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an excellent point. both of you. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think I have to say anything else.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone. I mean, until we can actually have enough people take the ideas of liberty seriously, then we unfortunately we have to nibble around the edges of the state. That said, we are seeing some major success stories here in New Hampshire. As I mentioned earlier, the state House Majority Leader is a Free Stater here in New Hampshire. That is a huge political success story, and that
is huge.
And it happened to a guy who, knowing him personally, when he moved here, I don't think he had any intention to do that. Like he was a purebred anarchist. I mean, the guy's name, I think he named himself after a famous anarchist, like his online handle or whatever was named after like a famous anarchist thinker. He's very, very principled dude, Jason Osborne, and now he's the state, House Majority Leader, and he probably would end up being the Speaker of the House, except the guy that's there's been there longer. So, once that guy retires... Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. That's unheard of up here in Ontario.
Right. Let me tell you, it's unheard of everywhere. It's unheard of because libertarians everywhere else, whether you be on Ontario, California, Florida, Texas, libertarians everywhere else are failures. They have never succeeded to do anything of any significance politically. Now, to be fair to the Libertarian Party, whether they be the Canadian one or the U.S. one, they have brought people to the ideas. I'm here now because of the Harry Brown presidential campaign in the year 1996 and 2000. So, I mean, they're not completely without merit, but they're not politically successful.
Right. 100%. Right. Well,
Keith,
good,
anything
good
else?
Points. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
No, you know what? I just like to... touch base and
hey, while you're on with us, Keith, how are things in Ontario province? Is there a vaccine passport there, like in Quebec or Alberta? What's going on?
Well, basically, it's no jab, no job.
Oh, God.
I've had a few interviews with, municipality for snow clearing this season that's coming. It's mandated that you must have the jab to have the job.
To be outside shoveling snow, they need to make sure that...
It's driving a big plow truck.
Alone.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And there's another job at GM plant. They're making the new GM pickup trucks in Oshawa, and I'm not sure if I have to have a jab for that or not, but I've been self-employed for about 30 years, and I've tried to... I'm trying to recreate myself and get in with the, so-called normal jobs. And you know what? You can't do it.
Why would you want to? Is your self-employed thing not working out after 30 years?
Well, no, because it's feast or famine when you're self-employed.
Sure.
Okay, there's no consistency with an income.
That's true.
That we all are required to, have a decent life. It was feast or famine.
Well, of course, anybody who's had a job knows that there's no guarantee you're going to have a job tomorrow either. But that much, that much said, it can feel more reliable. But then again, plenty of people who've been working forever just lost their jobs because of these mandates. Now, is it a government mandate where it's no jab, no job, or is it just corporate Canada is just for the most part implementing this thing because they feel like it?
It's not so that they feel like it. It's they have to go along with the narrative that the Ontario government says this has to happen, and if you all have employees there's more than 100 employees for that.
So they're doing the same thing. So that's what they're doing here in the United States, or at least supposedly. There's been an announcement that.
Same crap.
Got it. All right. And what are your neighbors? Are there people who are going out and protesting? Are there unvaccinated clusters of people who are coming together to network and do things together, or what?
Yes, there are networks that are trying to protest and putting up a fight, and I think there's a lot of court cases that are being put forward. People are learning how to use the judicial system, and I use that word lightly, to combat this. But again, you don't see this in the mainstream media where all the normies are, associated. Of course, they have the news, the CBC, the ABC type news. They're not getting the real picture.
Nope.
They're actually ostracizing me for not getting the jab, even close friends, stuff like that. Not so much family and close loved ones, but
this is really separating people, and ultimately is as sad as it can be to lose an old friend. Maybe you've grown so far apart that it's just not worth staying together. Hey, thanks, Keith, for the call. Thanks for sharing the status there in Canada.
Yeah, that brings a whole new meaning to toxic friends.
Exactly. Look, if you're not getting benefits from, both sides aren't benefiting from the relationship, it's time to break it up. And that's why we're going to talk about secession coming up here as well. Thanks, Keith, for the call. There's more coming up here. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Open phones if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Somebody in the chat room in YouTube chat says they only answer callers that pander to them. Not true.
We only answer all callers.
Yeah, we literally will take every single phone call. I would much rather speak to somebody that doesn't agree with me. I mean, I love being here on the show with you, Bonnie, but, we agree on a lot of stuff. Every now and then, if I find something we disagree on, I like to talk about that. But I especially like it more when somebody calls in with an opinion I haven't heard before, or a point that they want to make about something we're discussing, or something completely different than what we're talking about. It really is open phones here on Free Talk Live. And when we say open phones, it means the phones are open. If we're not taking calls, that means you can get on the line. A lot of people think when they hear talk radio, and you're not supposed to admit this. Like, when I started doing Free Talk Live almost 20 years ago, they sat us down in the general manager's office in Sarasota, Florida at Clear Channel Radio, and they went down the list of the rules of talk radio. And one of the rules of talk radio is you're never supposed to admit that you don't have a call on the line, or that there's no callers on hold or whatever. It's like, but we're an open phone show. So it's pretty obvious.
So to just be like, okay, now we'll start taking calls.
I don't know.
When it pops up or something.
I don't know how you're supposed to handle something like that, but to me it just seems so dishonest.
It's just stressing me out, so I'll get to them later.
Yeah, I don't want to be dishonest with my audience, and it's like, look, we've got open phones here.
Some days there's a lot, and some days there's none.
And if you hear a lot of calls on the air, that probably means it's going to be a little harder to get through. But that's usually only on like a Saturday. It's pretty rare. Like, almost never do we have full phones on a weeknight. Almost never.
One thing I know is true. If you're having relationship issues, call 603-283-6160 so I can give you advice.
Okay. Bonnie wants to help you. You can dial in 603-283-6160. We also want to talk about independence. And Bonnie, you had a story from the Mises Institute, because finally, people are starting to take the issue of independence for the various different states out there seriously.
Yeah, I've been nonstop being inundated with people talking about secession. Tom Woods and his guests that he has on.
Yep.
Learning about new people from there. I put hashtag NHExit on one of my Instagram posts, and I got 2 people like my thing, so I have New Hampshire independence people to follow.
Alu Axelman from LibertyBlock.com has been just killing
nonstop, yep.
Yeah, he's a machine. I mean, that guy just keeps cranking out the content. He's writing books. He's posting blogs.
He's doing debates.
Yeah, he's in a debate here. We've actually got not the entire debate, but we've got the opening statements from him and whoever the other guy is.
He's winning debates.
Well, yeah, that's right. He did technically win this debate. I think 77% of the audience voted in his favor at this particular debate, although it's obviously a liberty-friendly audience. But that said, maybe we'll play some of those clips coming up here in a moment. But you wanted to get into this Mises story, Bonnie, so let's do that.
Yes, this is from the Mises Institute, libertarian think tank, like you said earlier. Yeah. The article's name is 3 Reasons to Start Taking Secession Seriously. Last month, the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia released a new study which showed that at least among those polled, roughly 4 in 10, or 41% of Biden and half, 52% of Trump voters, at least somewhat agree that it's time to split the country, favoring blue-red states seceding from the Union.
And those numbers wouldn't have been there 5 years ago.
They
just wouldn't have. People weren't ready for this. But now things are starting to change.
Moreover, majorities in both groups agreed that there are many radical, immoral people trying to ruin things. And that was a quote.
Right. It's usually the other side, which is full of radical, immoral people, whoever they are.
And that, quote, "It is the duty of every true citizen to help eliminate the evil that poisons our country from within."
This is what they agreed with. This was part of the questions that they agreed with?
Yep.
Okay.
The majorities in both groups agreed with those sentiments.
Got it.
One might conclude that people who think that things are generally going well in a country aren't so concerned with the evil within that they think it's time to split the country. Oh, I see. So, obviously these people don't think the country is doing well if they think it's time to split the country.
Mm-hmm.
And they're concerned about getting rid of the evil within.
Which can't be done. DC cannot be de-evilified. You cannot get rid of the evil in Washington, D.C.
Also, what
Never.
do you really think you can do about Southern California when you live in Maine?
Nothing.
Nothing. I hate when people say, this country. Like, we need to do something about this country. Like, honestly, you shouldn't have any power to do anything about Southern New Mexico when you live in Washington State.
Yeah, we have nothing in common with those people, with the exception of the fact that we're all human beings. I mean, as far as our viewpoints are concerned, we're very, very different. We've got more in common geographically with the people in Quebec than we do. We're here in New Hampshire. The weather's more similar in Quebec than it is, in Southern California. The people are different in these places. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's just silly whenever people talk about a whole country like they can do something about it. It seems that President Biden has been unable to unite the country after all, in spite of his promises.
Did anyone believe he would?
I don't understand how you could believe he could do anything.
Did anyone believe Obama was going to bring about change? I mean,
I'm sure people did.
All of these politicians are liars.
But, of course, they didn't change anything.
No.
Didn't unite anything. Not that that really means anything. Those are just buzzwords.
Of course.
It seems that President Biden has been unable to unite the country after all, in spite of his promises that it's time to heal in America, and that he will be a president who seeks not to divide, but to unify. And now, literally, his Speaker of the House, or whatever she is, the redheaded lady.
Pelosi?
No, not Pelosi. Oh, not Speaker of the House, sorry. What's the one that always does, press conferences for him?
Oh, the spokesperson.
Yeah, the redheaded lady.
Pataki or Pisaki or something.
Yeah, Psaki, there we go. Jen Psaki. She said, point blank, that there would be two different rules for people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Sure.
And he ran on a campaign of being a president that thinks it's time to unify, not to divide.
Yeah, what a load.
Rather, it appears the country embraces a hard divide over a variety of issues, with vaccine mandates and parental rights in public education being only the most current ones.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, there's no reason to believe that these divides are simply going to go away. Secession is likely to become even more mainstream, as has been occurring in recent years, and as the old liberal consensus of the mid-20th century resides ever more into the distant past. Moreover, opponents of secession are clear that they're not willing to tolerate a separation that would allow Americans in neighboring jurisdictions to embrace other models of society or governance. But in the real world, major political changes can come suddenly and in unexpected ways. In 1987, most Soviets still assumed the USSR would continue to exist for many more decades, if not centuries.
Sure, it had been there for decades already, so why wouldn't it continue? And the U.S. has been around for, a couple centuries at this point. So it's understandable that people believe that this thing, this union, is going to continue forever.
It says
but
because
nothing
of this.
lasts forever. Hold that thought, Bonnie. We're going to continue here in moments, more with what Mises has to say about why secession should be taken seriously. 3 reasons, right? Why secession should be taken seriously. And if you're not taking it seriously, I want to know why not. The number here, 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. if you'd like to see
real prosperity.
Start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin,
its impact's hard to overstate. Results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great. Homelessness and hunger to eliminate. Let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Meeting President Emmanuel Macron in Rome ahead of the G20 summit, the president indicated that he believed the French had been given fair warning that their agreement with Australia was about to be ripped up. He spoke off microphone in response to a reporter's question.
I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that they would not be included. My honest to God would not be included.
The White House has not disclosed who the president believed had given the information to France, nor whether it was a member of his own senior team. The president's day began with a 90-minute Vatican meeting with Pope Francis. Climate change was high on the agenda. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised by her doctors to rest for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they've been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here for you if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And also want to let you know, over at freetalklive.com, we've got a lot of features, including our social media platform. You can go to social.freetalklive.com. It is a Mastodon system, which means that it is open source. It's self-hosted, which means we are the host. There's not some big tech company behind this. It's Free Talk Live, so you have the opportunity to express yourself without fear of being taken down by Mark Zuckerberg or Jack over at Twitter or whoever the hell's running YouTube. you can just post over at social.freetalklive.com and share your posts and they call it tooting, actually, over on Mastodon. So you can toot and you can retoot and you can boost other people's toots. It's very, very cool. And it's free, of course, over at social.freetalklive.com. We'll continue with your story, Bonnie, about independence, secession, the Mises Institute weighing in. But first, we go to Fix. He's on the line, calling us from Epsom, New Hampshire, listening to WEMJ. Fix, you're on Free Talk Live.
How do you do?
Hey, welcome. You're on the air.
I got some breaking information here. I finally think I've located the person that voted for Biden. I saw a bumper sticker and I got their license plate. So I thought maybe you guys would be interested in that.
Yeah, I see more Bernie stickers when I'm driving than I see Biden stickers. Hardly ever see Biden.
Definitely. Way more Bernie than Biden.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's pretty funny. I was just joking. I actually haven't seen a Biden sticker, but I'm looking for that person. I know somebody voted for him.
Right.
But, yeah, so I wanted to just bring up, and I thought, I don't hear you guys talk about the Green New Deal sham a whole lot, but I got a thought that debunks the entire thing if anybody's ever got a debate with somebody over whether it's really the greatest threat facing humanity in the world
Well,
today.
just before you get into that, Fix, I will comment that when they first proposed it, I don't know, 2 years ago or whatever it was, we definitely talked about it. And, I guess they want to stop people from flying, which they're kind of trying to do with the vaccine mandates and all that. And they want to force everybody to, put whatever the governmental approved technology of the time is into all their homes and force renovate and all that. And so it was just a ridiculous load of requirements and incredible cost. And obviously declaring independence as a free New Hampshire would solve that problem and get us right out from underneath any kind of Green New Deal. But go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, well, yeah, we definitely all have to start doing our own part to, I always tell people the solution to if there is any type of crisis with the environment going on, the solution is in our trash cans, it's in our dumps, it's in our landfills, and it's not something that's sitting on a shelf somewhere that has a barcode and a price tag that we can go out and buy our way out of the problem, if it does exist at all.
Well, yeah, and you also can't tax your way out of it either. I mean, the idea that the government can somehow solve any kind of problem is completely ignorant of what governments do. I mean, the government creates problems and then acts as though they can do something about it just so people will give them more money and more power. And the reality is the government is the greatest polluter in all of the United States. It's the government and specifically their military that does more polluting than all of the top corporate polluters combined.
Right. Yeah, they've got the greatest problem facing humanity in one pocket, and then in the other pocket they've got a neatly tight-wrapped, price-tagged solution waiting to give to everybody. It's just all about putting money in their pockets.
That never even actually solves anything.
No, it does solve making their buddies richer, though. Like, it definitely takes money from our pockets, value from our savings, and transfers it to the politically connected class, the buddies of the politicians. And that includes both the Republicans and the Democrats, because anybody that believes Republicans are going to make the government smaller in D.C. just hasn't been paying attention.
Yeah. Well, if you look back to, World War II, for instance, and you look at what Germany was doing with Hitler and working with Ferdinand Porsche and inventing the Volkswagen Beetle, they basically made the most stripped-down economical vehicle that they could come up with at the time. And, if electric cars are somehow a solution to an environmental crisis that's threatening humanity, they wouldn't have touch screens, push button, power everything, ass massagers, and look like $1 million, Porsche or something. You know what I mean? They're like, that's not, everybody doesn't need to drive a car like Mitt Romney or Elon Musk and look like a millionaire to solve the environmental problems. If it was actually a solution they were trying to give us, these cars would be like getting 200 miles to the gallon. They'd be bolt-on panels. They'd come in one color. They wouldn't have power anything. They would be totally something that the owner could maintain and repair themselves, and they could be rebuilt and reused for generation after generation of people. I still drive a Model A from 1930. I have a Model A dump truck from 1929 that I use.
That's amazing.
And I've built cars that run on waste fuel that get over 130 miles an hour using technology that's almost 50 years old.
I guess there's a reason they call you Fix.
Yeah, I mean, the solution is in our waste. It's in the junkyards. If people would get off their butts and go to the dumps, go to the landfills, go to the junkyards, and start making use of stuff we've already produced. We don't need to be producing more stuff.
Here's a question for you, Fix. Since you know we're having a lengthy discussion here, I'm curious. Are you a New Hampshire native?
Yep.
Now, how do you feel about New Hampshire independence?
Well, I think it's everybody's responsibility as an individual.
Well, obviously, I absolutely support individual independence. I mean, I think people should be able to declare their own personal freedom and, ignore the state. But I mean specifically like New Hampshire declaring independence as a political entity and saying goodbye to this failed U.S. experiment. What do you think about that?
I think it'd be great. I mean, we obviously aren't going to get anywhere trying to work our way up through the system. It's like I see it at the school board meetings everywhere I go. And if you try to take something to court, the further up you go, the more bought out everybody is.
Right.
So it's like it's completely useless, this whole idea of, get involved in your local politics and we can change it all from the inside out. It's absolutely insane because the higher up the ladder you climb trying to change anything, the more you just run into the roadblocks of people that are completely bought out.
Yeah, it's frustrating enough to just have to deal with the New Hampshire government, but at least we know where they live. And, if you need to, you can go protest out in front of the governor's house. But you can't get anywhere near Congress, in the United States. You can't get anywhere near those people. At least in New Hampshire, the state reps make $100 a year, and they don't even have a secretary. They don't have any staff. They've got a locker in the state house. So they're not like professional politicians in the same way that they are in other states. So I'm glad you're on board with independence. This is a discussion that is going to get even more important coming up in the upcoming months as the constitutional amendment is facing a potential vote. We have to get it through the Senate and the House. It's got to pass with more than 60%. And then the people of New Hampshire will get to vote on it. So I appreciate you answering the question. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Oh, no, I'll touch in from time to time. I'll be plowing snow this winter, and I usually have the radio tuned in to you guys because it's about all I get.
Thanks, Fix. I appreciit you being out there, man. Thanks for the call.
All right, take care.
That's Fix there in Epsom. The number here is 603-283-6160. It just warms my heart when people support independence, Bonnie.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't it feel nice?
And that's one thing I like about New Hampshire is despite, the comments I was making earlier about some native New Hampshire people being upset about free staters coming in.
I don't think there's that many natives that are upset about it.
I really don't think that that's a majority at all. From the people we went around and polled and surveyed, a lot of them are very pro-freedom and very pro-independence.
Absolutely. And there's another one right there.
Them.
Yeah. The number here is 603-283-6160, and that's why New Hampshire has retained more freedom over the years. That's why New Hampshire is arguably the most free of all of the states, because of those New Hampshire natives, those Granite Staters that really do understand live free or die. There's more coming up here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. If we get a chance, we'll tell you about Austin, Texas, where a man has been killed by the police because he wouldn't mow his lawn. And if we get the chance. With you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we told you about Intercoin, which can help any business and organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. Now, Intercoin.org has launched worldwide. And if there's a token you want to launch or an app you want to build, go to Intercoin.org and enter your email, and the team will get in touch and learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, you can get some Intercoin investor tokens for yourself. And there's going to be, I think, some big news coming up on Tuesday, as Intercoin is going to announce that the Intercoin investor token is going to be available on its very first ever centralized exchange. Now, we're not yet sure. They told us which one it was, but I want to make sure that everything is as expected. I, of course, can't do anything with cryptocurrency, so somebody else might be doing that and checking out things, and then we will be able to report back to you that things are as they're expected to be. And we'll tell you what the details are as far as which exchange it's going to be. But that's coming within days. So, in the meantime, you can go to intercoin.org, learn more about Intercoin. It's nice to see things moving ahead there at intercoin.org.
Intercoin.org.
They've got a catchy tune. There's no doubt about it. So, Bonnie, you're sharing with us a story from Mises, which is a libertarian think tank based out of Alabama, right? I think they're in Alabama. if I recall correctly.
It's interesting.
I believe so. Anyway.
Should have visited them when I was there this month.
That's true. So this is a story about the three reasons why people should take secession seriously now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's continue.
They were talking about the fact that when secession happens, it usually doesn't happen just because there's a social consensus and it happens long over time. It happens suddenly. And they gave some examples of that, such as the USSR. And they said because of this, now is the time to begin asking the difficult questions about secession and how military and financial questions can be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, oh, what about the military? Bam, it's over. There are questions that can be addressed. They're not that complicated. People need to actually be involved in, deciding.
Decisions will have to be made.
Yeah.
Like, one of the questions is, what about military bases? What about existing military infrastructure? Like here in New Hampshire, I think there's some sort of an Air Force base out in the Portsmouth area. And so the question is, what happens with that when New Hampshire declares independence and says, all right, we're out? What happens with the Air Force base? What do you think, Bonnie?
I think we could pay them for it if they really needed us to.
Or maybe they could just, be allowed to keep operating it, basically. Kind of like Guantanamo Bay, right? Like Guantanamo Bay is in Cuba, and it's not part of the Cuban government. It's an American installation.
I'd rather them have their military out of New Hampshire.
I don't disagree with you. But if it's a question of starting a war, would you rather go ahead and just let them, like if it's like, all right, well, you guys can go, but we have to keep our military base there for the time being, would you let them?
Wouldn't that seem kind of insidious?
I mean, yeah, but if it's a question of are they going to blockade the port or start a war or something like that, I mean, do you really want to rattle the cage as much as you can on the way out, or do you want to just say, all right, fine, you guys can, have your little base?
I guess so, but we could also just make a payment plan with them to pay for it.
True. That's another option.
Why would they need a military base at our port at that point?
Why do they need hundreds of military bases all around the world? I mean, they don't, but they think they do. And they are probably more than willing to get violent about it. I think you've got an interesting idea, though, offering them some money to make them go away. I don't know how much money it would cost to make them abandon an entire military base. I imagine that wouldn't be cheap. And the people of New Hampshire tend to be pretty frugal. Like, they don't want to pay a whole lot of money for things. That's why there's not road signs at every intersection in New Hampshire. I suspect that's simply because New Hampshire is cheap. And that's not a bad thing, right? Like, it's a good thing to be frugal and not spend too much money. So if you could come up with a good price, and maybe the funds could be raised voluntarily. Maybe there's enough peaceniks who would throw together the money to say, all right, get out, if they would do it.
Enough Bitcoin investors should move to New Hampshire if we get really close to seceding.
Well, they should move to New Hampshire before we get close to seceding, because if you want to help us get out of this arrangement, which is a terrible, abusive relationship, then the more people that can get here before 2022, the fall of 2022, when this thing might be on the ballot, the better. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, back at Mises, they say, considering all this, we see three main reasons why it is increasingly unwise to ignore secession as a serious possibility. Secession went mainstream. The first reason we must now take secession seriously is that it is no longer a topic of discussion among the most radical. In 2014, for example, a quarter of those polled said they thought that their state should secede. By 2018, 39% were saying they think a state should have the final say as to whether or not that state remains part of the United States. In 2020...
That's a big increase.
In 4 years, yes. In 2020, more than a third of those polled said states have a legal right to secede.
And we talked about some of these polls as they came out here on Free Talk Live, and I think they're all great news because even though they're not necessarily majorities, their numbers are going up, and a third or even a quarter is a good starting point. You've got to start somewhere with people. You got to have the conversation in order to persuade. Because some people, they're going to say one thing, but then when they see that some of their friends are saying something different, they might start listening to what their friends say and what people say on television or on the radio in favor of independence.
And those numbers were not New Hampshire only.
Yeah, correct.
And the New Hampshire Constitution makes it crystal clear that it's legal for us to secede.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's not even a question here. I mean, it's just a question of, are you aware of the fact that it's legal for us to secede?
Yeah, New Hampshire's Constitution, you want to check Articles 7 and 10. Those are the two most relevant ones to self-determination and independence.
Mainstream conservatives increasingly suggest the possibility from Rush Limbaugh to Dennis Prager. Indeed, just last week, Prager admitted that secession offers a chance to live in a country that better reflects one's own values. Should secession happen, Prager said, I would live in a state governed by Judeo-Christian values versus one governed by left-wing values. And why shouldn't he have... I don't want to live in a state that's governed by Judeo-Christian values, or else I would have stayed in Utah. Yeah. But if he wants to, why should I tell him that he shouldn't be allowed to just because I don't want to?
Yeah, the leftists should have a place for them.
The Mormons should have a place for them.
The Mormons should have a place. The right-wingers should have a place. The libertarians should have a place. Absolutely. And, you know, there's obviously a bunch of places out there, so there can be more than one of them, right? Like maybe some of the right-wingers don't like what the Mormons are up to, so they should stay out of Utah, but they might want to go to Texas.
Or Alabama.
Whatever. Or, yeah. So I think this makes sense. Why would people want to continue living with people who don't like them, who don't agree with them?
Just fighting every day instead of getting anything done.
Yeah.
Says, even elderly conservatives are starting to grasp the idea. Separation brings choice, and choice is better than ossified notions of patriotism. Indeed, it appears it's no coincidence that older conservative operatives like Prager have been among those who are late to warm to the idea of secession. According to Zogby's 2020 poll on secession, favorable attitudes towards secession decline as the poll group gets older. In the 18 to 29-year-old group, a majority, 52%, think states have a legal right to secede. In the over 65 age group, the number is only 23%.
Wow.
Wow. A lot longer indoctrination, I guess.
The bad news is 65 and up is more likely to vote than younger people are likely to vote.
Long.
Well, no, it's always generally probably going to be true. It's, you know, even as they get older, they're going to die off. I get what you're saying, but older people are generally more likely to vote than younger people. I don't see that changing at any point. But that said, that's a good sign because it means that those people are going to age out. They're going to pass away at some point. And more of the younger people support independence. More of the younger people support separation. They support divorcing D.C., and that is great news. It means there's a bright future of choice ahead of us after this union fails. And if you look at the history of large unions like the Soviet Union, and even now with the European Union, with Brexit, with Great Britain leaving the European Union, these things are failing. These large conglomerations of states, they come together for a time, and then they realize that they just can't get along, and it ends. And hopefully this one will end peacefully, because that's the difference this time. People, they say, oh, well, it decided that. Abraham Lincoln decided that in the 1800s. No, that was a violent revolution. That was a violent attempt to secede. And although some people would say that the attack on the fort in South Carolina was actually a false flag, and that it wasn't even the South that attacked the fort, there's an interesting theory about that one. But, it's such an old event, it's hard to really know for sure what the truth is. This time, we can stay peaceful, and we've got the cameras to prove it. There's more coming up here. Hour number 3 is on the way. You can join us on Free Talk Live. Your thoughts on independence.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correa, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Meeting President Emmanuel Macron in Rome ahead of the G20 summit, the president indicated that he believed the French had been given fair warning that their agreement with Australia was about to be ripped up. He spoke off microphone in response to a reporter's question.
I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that they would not be to. I honestly thought it would not be right now.
The White House has not disclosed who the president believed had given the information to France, nor whether it was a member of his own senior team. The president's day began with a 90-minute Vatican meeting with Pope Francis. Climate change was high on the agenda. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised by her doctors to rest for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they've been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the extraordinary row over fishing rights between Britain and France, after the French detained a British trawler and fined another one for allegedly illegally fishing for scallops in French waters. Routine checks were carried out off the coast of Le Havre. The owners of the detained ship say their crew was operating completely legally, but the French say a post-Brexit trade dispute over fishing licences requires resolution by the beginning of next month, or they will bar British boats from some French ports. Jonathan Miller, a columnist with the UK magazine The Spectator, says there's a domestic political aspect to the French behaviour.
This is an extraordinary episode in a bigger thing, which is the re-election of
Emmanuel Macron. He's gone into this kind of hissy fit diplomacy, this tantrum diplomacy. He's currently having rows with the Algerians, the Australians, the Americans, the British, the Swiss, and now he's kind of absurdly going over to war over a few scallops, or as the French call them, coquilles Saint-Jacques.
Indeed they do, but whatever you call them, there is a growing battle over them, and the British government says France's threats are disappointing and disproportionate, while the French say the British are pushing too hard to test the patience of Paris. The main news again, President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised to drop all public engagements and rest for 2 more weeks. And the EU has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's program in the Democratic Republic of Congo over a sexual abuse scandal. There's more from us on Twitter @FeatureStory. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
I'm Brooke Alvarez, and while I may not acknowledge your presence in person, and if you try to approach me, you'll most certainly be hit in the face with the stinging nettles I carry on me at all times, I like to take a moment every now and again to answer your questions so that you can get to know the real me. Here's a tweet from @Kirkamunga saying, what is the most important thing to remember when talking to people who may not be as informed as you? I love this question, Kirkamunga. There are 3 simple steps to dealing with uninformed people. First, when you realize that someone doesn't know something, repeat very loudly in their face the thing they don't know. For example, you don't know who the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe is? Second, look to everyone around you and let them know that this person is completely ignorant. Hey everyone, Sebastian doesn't know who the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe is. Third, you call up the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe and tell him that Sebastian doesn't know who he is, and then laugh really loudly until the ignorant person just leaves in utter shame. If you'd like to ask me a question, just tweet it to my handle @BrookeAlvarez or post it to my Facebook wall.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the 3rd hour of the program. You are invited if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can bring up anything you want. We're going to go back to your phone calls coming up here. Also, Bonnie is in the middle of a story from the Mises Institute, the pretty libertarian think tank out there, weighing in on the idea of independence, secession, for the various different states out there that want it. And if you want to stay with the empire, then stay with the empire. But a lot of us are sick and tired of this crap. And now people are starting to take this idea seriously. There's been a movement in Texas for quite some time. There's been a movement in California for quite some time. Until this year, there's been some, rumblings in New Hampshire. But this year, I think New Hampshire is really breaking out of the pack and taking the lead, at least as far as the political process is concerned. There's a constitutional amendment that has been proposed by 9 state representatives, and the maximum who can propose a bill is 10, so almost the maximum, which is nice. And that constitutional amendment is working its way through the system right now. It is yet to actually be assigned a bill number, so that's coming. Once we have a bill number, we'll be able to tell you it's CACR X, whatever the bill number is, but we don't know that yet. So it's still the very early part of the process, but people are starting to take secession seriously. It's Ian and Bonnie here. Let's go to your phone calls, though. You can bring up anything. Joe, you're on the line in Maryland. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
What's on your mind, Joe?
Hey, I was calling up to find out what happened because, I had an operation, then I was in physical rehab for 8 months and 17 days, and
yikes!
I hear Crypto 6 and guys are in jail and nobody's not around anymore. What happened?
Yeah, well, let me see if I can keep this as brief as possible. March 16th at 6 in the morning, we had our windows in the house busted in. The front door on nobody's side was smashed in with a battering ram attached to a Bearcat. And both sides of this, it's a duplex in which we live and do the show, and both sides were raided by dozens of armed agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the ATF, the United States Postal Service, and a handful of other governmental
Treasury,
bureaucracies.
IRS.
Yeah, a bunch of guys. And they came in and they put handcuffs on everybody in the house, and they arrested me. They arrested nobody. They arrested Aria at her house. It was a coordinated raid of multiple different locations. We've been charged with a bunch of non-crimes of victimless crimes for so-called Bitcoin-related things, money laundering, wire fraud. And what else? Oh, I've been charged with the kingpin charge of, it's called, let's see, what is it? Continuing financial crimes enterprise, which has a minimum of a 10-year sentence if I'm found guilty of that. And let's see, there's...
When I was handcuffed half naked with some man, bureaucrat, I don't even know what agency he was part of, in my own bedroom, I asked him, why do you guys have a warrant to be doing this? Why are you guys doing this? He said, you'll get a chance to look at the warrant, but basically it's Bitcoin. And I said, Bitcoin's not illegal.
Yeah. Money transmission without a license, I think, is another charge, and then like conspiracy to money transmit without a license. So that's, a basic rundown of the charges. I was held in jail for 69 days prior to being granted bail on some very restrictive bail conditions. I'm basically on home confinement. I'm only allowed out of the house with advance permission from my probation officer. I've got a tracking bracelet on my ankle. Our friend Nobody is also out. He spent 6 months behind bars before finally being granted bail. He is told he can leave his house. However, he's not allowed to speak publicly on the radio. He's not allowed to do television interviews. So they've taken away his freedom of speech, and they've taken away all our abilities. Those of us who were charged, Bonnie, you were not charged. You were just handcuffed while they were searching the place. So those of us who were charged were called the Crypto Six, and the website is thecrypto6.com if you want to learn more about it. But those of us who are charged are facing, years behind bars, and there are no victims to these supposed crimes. So that's kind of a rundown for you. Luckily, everybody is out. Only Nobody and I were held for more than the first day. Aria and the rest of the Crypto Six, which includes a grandmother, were actually released the same day. So it was just me and Nobody that were held behind bars for a lengthy period of time.
Oh wow, I'm sorry to hear about that, because I really enjoyed your station. I missed it so much when I was in the hospital and
Well,
stuff.
thank you. And the show never went away. Bonnie, Captain Kickass, Chris Wade, and a bunch of the other folks, stepped up and took care of things while I was in jail, and Nobody was in jail. So, the show never stopped. Free Talk Live continued. I think we were off the air for one day after the feds tore out wires from our studio, which was completely unnecessary. And the entire raid was completely unnecessary, of course. But, they've got their toys and they want to use them, so they did.
Well, also glad to hear that you're out of the hospital and that you seem to be doing better.
Yeah, congratulations on that, Joe. Thanks for coming back to us.
I can't walk or anything like that. I'm still struggling and stuff. I had like a 10-inch pipe put in my lower back and had my nerves. Yeah, I had all that stuff. That's why I was in the hospital for so long.
Well, we're glad you came back, man. Thanks for being out there.
This is my favorite show to listen to.
Cool. What else did you want to share with us tonight besides just curious, being curious about what happened to us? Is there anything else on your mind?
Oh man, I'm just really I'm really upset. I don't hear all the regular guys and everything on there.
Yeah, me too. I miss Nobody. I'm not even allowed to talk to him. So under bail conditions.
And you guys live in the same duplex, right?
Well, he moved out, moved in with his girlfriend as soon as he got out of jail. So he was my neighbor, but now he's not directly next door to me anymore. But he's back in the Keene area from what I hear, and I would love to be able to see him and give him a hug. But I'm prohibited from doing that. If I do that, I will be put back in jail, and he will be put back in jail on these bail conditions.
And you guys got private attorneys, right? And
we
stuff
do.
Like that. I mean, you're not going to try to defend yourself. Yeah, because I remember a lot of times you defended yourself. Because these are heavy duty charges. You don't want to.
Yep, no, I agree with you. Every time I've been charged with stuff at the state level, it's always been a misdemeanor or a violation. I've always taken those cases myself. But this one, we do have private attorneys, and they seem to be pretty good. But it's going to be at least several more months before we see the inside of a courtroom. It's federal court, and it does not move quickly, and there's a huge amount of discovery in this particular case. Apparently, there's like 100,000 documents that our attorneys are going to have to go through. So it's an insane attack on the freedom to help people find Bitcoin, to connect people with Bitcoin, and they hate Bitcoin, and they want to take us down, and they want to send a message, and we're not going to go down easy. That's for sure. We're definitely going to stand up and make it difficult for them.
Well, I'm going to put you all on my prayers and things like that, and hope that best for you. You don't serve any time or anything.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you, man.
you
Thanks
all.
for the call tonight. I appreciate
Right.
hearing from you. And thanks for the kind words as well. The number is 603-283-6160. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. The federal government gang hates cryptocurrency, and the reason they hate cryptocurrency is because it takes power away from them. It allows the individual to empower themselves and have the power of money, which historically the government has controlled. And now they are losing that control, and they're not happy about it.
Yep. I mean, the banks and the government work together to keep, all the power in their hands together.
And that's exactly right. The banks are a huge part of this particular case. The government couldn't have made this case without the cooperation of the banks. So whatever their case is, we still haven't even seen all the evidence yet. So who
Bitcoin
knows?
makes banks pretty much irrelevant. I'm sure there's going to be like Bitcoin banking services.
They're
if you
working
want
on
them.
it. The smarter banks are looking into Bitcoin. The smarter banks are, dipping their toes in the water, and they're learning about it, and they're figuring out ways that they can offer cryptocurrency-related products to their customers. And I support them.
It should still be optional. You should still
absolutely.
be able to just, have your Bitcoin in your own wallet and have your own keys.
And it always will be. And that's one of the things that really irks them, that people can now just opt out of their system of money, their scam system of money with $1, which is a total scam, top to bottom.
Pyramid scheme.
It's always going to lose value over time, whereas cryptocurrency can go up in value and tends to, it seems like, over time. If you want to join us here, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tom in Baltimore asks, is there a legal fund set up for contributions? I think there's something over at thecrypto6.com, but I'm not involved in it. And honestly, we're taken care of as far as attorneys are concerned, Tom. So thank you for asking, but feel free to give if you like. More coming up.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agris Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. You can join us and bring up what you want. Right here, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. By the way, thanks to Gavin68, who is a member of the new Free Talk Live AMPS Patreon, which we kicked off about a week or so ago. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com to learn more about the Patreon. It's very similar to the old AMP program. It's just we had to blow up the old AMP system, so we replaced it with this. amps.freetalklive.com. You can go to the old site too, and it'll take you right there to our new Patreon page. And you can join and help us out just like Gavin68 has done. We certainly appreciate the support. And you get some cool perks and some benefits for doing that. Again, thanks, Gavin68, over at amps.freetalklive.com. Ian and
Bonnie. We're
going to continue here. Bonnie, you've been sharing a story with us from the Mises Institute. 3 reasons why people should take secession seriously.
Yes, their first reason is that secession went mainstream. And they went over some numbers showing that overall, secession is a more popular idea among younger people.
And those numbers have been going up as well. It's just general acceptance of the idea of secession has gone up quite a bit in just the last 5 years.
And yes, and then they started covering that secession is a more popular thing among younger people and gets less popular the older a person's age group is.
Correct.
And they said, in other words, the dogma of national unity is a dogma of older generations. Not only is secession increasingly mainstream, but it may well be the wave of the future as well. Meanwhile, members of Congress, including Iowa's Stephen Holt and Georgia's Marjorie Taylor Greene, now openly speak well of secession. They wouldn't say this if they didn't think their constituents agree with them.
That's true. Politicians love to run out in front of a parade and act like they've always been supportive of whatever that parade is, whatever the issue is. They'll never do it unless there's a parade there. If there's just one guy walking down the street, politicians not just going to completely ignore you. But if they feel like there's a movement,
instead of many votes.
Yeah, they feel like there's a movement. If they feel like there's support, they're going to be on board. And that's interesting. I didn't know that about. Of course, I don't pay attention to D.C. politicians.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about them either.
Glad to hear about it.
Moreover, we might measure the growth of the secessionist position by the number of pundits who now feel the need to condemn it. Once upon a time, secession was regarded as so out there that it scarcely deserved any attention at all. No longer. Nowadays, conservative Beltway pundits feel the need to go on rants about it on Fox News.
Good. You know, they say if you take flack, you're over the target, basically. Or if you don't take flack, you're not over it. And so clearly people attacking the idea of independence means that they're threatened. They feel like they need to defend the empire.
The second reason is the left's unionists want to run your life. A second reason to take secession seriously is the fact that the left doesn't seem to be learning anything from the rise of separatism. Just as many Americans appear to be embracing a posture of opposition rule from the center, the left is doubling down on the idea that more local autonomy is not to be tolerated. A clear example of this is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act introduced in the U.S. Senate. The legislation, if passed, would give Washington vast new powers in regulating and controlling how states conduct their own elections. Originally, of course, state governments had almost total control over how elections were governed and conducted within each state.
Mm-hmm.
This makes sense in a country that began as a collection of sovereign republics. Just as EU member states conduct their elections in a way that's locally controlled, the same was once true for the U.S. Now, over time, as in most areas, the federal government asserted more control.
Yeah, and I remember when I was in jail, I was listening to a local talk show on the Pulse of New Hampshire, which is like a 3-station, or I guess they've got technically 5 stations. But anyway, there's a large group of stations that simulcast here in New Hampshire. I was listening to the morning show, and he is the guy that hosts that show has been up in arms about this particular issue, about the federal government taking over local elections, setting rules for how the state of New Hampshire is supposed to do elections. And he even had like the New Hampshire Secretary of State on the show to explain why this is completely a violation of the New Hampshire Constitution. And of course, I'm sitting there, in the jail cell, completely locked down for 23 hours a day, wishing I could just call in and say, hey, look, secession's the solution here. You're not going to just vote power away from the federal government. You're not going to be able to...
Especially when they start controlling how you vote.
Yeah, and they are taking over as much autonomy as they can from state governments, and electing more Republicans isn't going to change it. It's not going to make things better in Washington, D.C., and it never has.
Especially when Republicans can be bought by the federal government just as easily as the left. See King Sununu.
Well, all you have to do is look at the Republican administrations. Look at the George Bush years where the Republicans were in charge of all of the federal government. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had George Bush in the presidency, and government got bigger. It didn't get smaller. If you believe the government, the Republicans' statements on things, you think they're going to make the government smaller, because that's what they always say when they're not in power. But as soon as they get into power, they act just like the Democrats do. There's no difference between them. What else, Bonnie?
It says, over time, as in most areas, the federal government asserted more control. But with the Voting Rights Advancement Act, local control over elections would be virtually abolished, with most any changes subject to a federal imperature.
I don't know what that is.
Naturally, opposition to surrendering state elections to federal control is denounced as motivated by racism and other nefarious goals. And this is reflective of our left's opposition to secession and decentralization in general. The idea is we can't let those people run their own affairs because they're sure to use local prerogatives for evil. For example, when condemning secession in New York Magazine, Democratic strategist Ed Kilgore made it clear he has no intention of letting people do much of anything without federal oversight. He writes, "So, might we drift apart more or less peacefully this time around? Possibly, but count me out when it comes to agreeing to a national divorce. How could I happily accept the accelerated subjugation of women and people of color in a new adjacent Red America any more than abolitionists could accept the continuation and expansion of slavery, the slavery they hated?"
What a ridiculous statement. I mean, he's suggesting there that there are no black red staters, right? That there's nobody who's involved in Republican politics or whatever who is non-white.
Well,
and it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyone that's been to a Trump rally knows that there's a ton of people from all kinds of different, geographic and racial backgrounds that support the right wing.
Yeah.
And they should have their place. They're not going to subjugate people. There's not a bunch of... I don't get it. People think that there's a ton of white supremacists out there, and I'm sorry, there's not. There's barely any of them, and most of them are on trial right now in Charlottesville.
You can make them cry very easily.
Yeah.
You can argue with them until they run out of the room.
Most of them are federal agents, frankly. Most of them are undercover federal operatives who exist only to try to gin up, conflict between
That's what
people.
I believe.
So it's a load. Look, is this guy in New York saying that he's going to invade those states? Because
or he's going to go there and physically stop people from doing whatever.
I mean, he can oppose it if he wants to, but the reality is, if there are enough people who say we're done and walk away from the union, then there's nothing that can be done about it. There's nothing that the federal government or him sitting in New York is going to do about New Hampshire or Texas or you fill in the blank. those people walking away from it.
The best weapon to use against ideas you think are bad are good ideas.
That's
so
right.
Free speech. Just if you think that people have bad ideas, you should be free to tell them that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you should be free to hold them down and make them do something right.
That's the hallmark of a bad idea, is you have to have a gun to enforce it. There's more coming up here at 603-283-6160. Your calls and thoughts are welcome on Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says his government was clumsy in its handling of a controversial submarine deal with Australia that led France to withdraw its ambassador from Washington. Meeting President Emmanuel Macron in Rome ahead of the G20 summit, the president indicated that he believed the French had been given fair warning that their agreement with Australia was about to be ripped up. He spoke off microphone in response to a reporter's question.
I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that they would not go through. I honestly thought it was not very bad enough.
The White House has not disclosed who the president believed had given the information to France, nor whether it was a member of his own senior team. The president's day began with a 90-minute Vatican meeting with Pope Francis. Climate change was high on the agenda. Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been advised by her doctors to rest for 2 more weeks. From FSN's London bureau, Ollie Barrett reports.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will not undertake any official visits over the next 2 weeks. She may continue some so-called light duties, such as virtual audiences with dignitaries. There is said to be a firm intention on the Queen's part to be at Remembrance Sunday events in person on the 14th of November. The 95-year-old spent a night in hospital last week for what were described as preliminary investigations. Earlier this week, it was announced she wouldn't attend the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, but would deliver a video address to delegates. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Commission has suspended funding to the World Health Organization's programme in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the global health body's handling of a sexual abuse scandal. From FSN's bureau in Kinshasa in the DRC, Chris Ochamaringa reports.
Authorities at the EU say the suspension of funding for the World Health Organization operations in the DRC will affect 5 programs that they've been supporting. The programs include the health body's COVID-19 and Ebola operations. The decision comes a month after an independent investigation uncovered 83 cases of sexual abuse committed by staff of international aid agencies during an Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. 21 of the implicated officials were employees of the WHO. An independent panel blamed the WHO for structural failures that led to the sexual abuse. Chris Ochamaringa, Kinshasa.
Another Republican congressman who supported President Trump's impeachment has announced he's standing down. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has been one of the former president's most outspoken Republican critics. He says his political career is not over, and he's founding a new centrist organization that could further threaten Republican unity. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, open phones. If you want to join us, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about independence, secession, of whoever wants to go should be free to go. And the fact is, if you just say so, that's all it takes. See, the thing is, there's all these people out there that say, oh, well, if you want to try to see, well, first of all, it was decided by the Civil War. Well, no, it wasn't. Peaceful secession was not decided by the Civil War. They didn't try peaceful secession back then. So we're talking about something completely different.
Abraham Lincoln repeatedly bombed Atlanta, Georgia, just to keep people in fear when there was no fighting going on.
He just, completely wanted. He put people in prison, news people. He put people to death just to keep the Union together. So, I mean, the dude was a psychopath, no doubt about that. And he didn't care about slavery at all. He said specifically that if he could keep slavery and keep the Union, he would have done that.
Yep. He used it as a tool.
Exactly. So, no, we didn't try peaceful secession. That's going to happen. That's where it's going. And no, you don't have to ask permission to leave. There's a lot of people who believe, well, you have to get 3/4 of the Congress to let you go.
That doesn't even make sense. You have to get your abusive ex-husband to agree to let you leave him.
Right. No one would see that as sane if it was a marriage, right? Like if somebody was being beaten by their abusive husband or wife and the person being beaten said, I'm gone. No one would say, whoa, did you ask your abusive husband if you could go first? Because if he says you can't go, then you can't go.
Yeah. Him and his family have to get together and 2/3 have to say yes.
No one would say that. And in this case, it really doesn't matter what Congress thinks. Because if the people of New Hampshire or the people of California or Texas, which are three of the, I would say states that are the most further along in these movements, if those people say, we're done, it's over. But if they want to have a long, lengthy process like Brexit did, where it took years and years and years of politicking and discussing and politicking and going back and forth, and they can do that if that's what they want. Or they can take the New Hampshire approach, where the proposal on the table, the
Constitutional Amendment.
Constitutional Amendment specifically says that we will be declaring independence upon the passing of that amendment. It's over immediately. That's the end of it. And then if you want to have a negotiation with the ex-spouse at that point about, how to split up the baby or whatever, how to split the assets, the military bases, whatever other things that need to be split, fine, have that conversation after you pack up and walk out the door. So, Bonnie, you're sharing with us a Mises Institute story about 3 different reasons why secession should be taken seriously. The first one is it's more popular now than ever.
Yep, it's mainstream.
Yep, and it's the numbers are going up as far as the support is concerned. The second one is pointing out that the federal government continues to infringe upon states' rights, and of course, as a libertarian, we don't believe, I think most libertarians would agree states don't have rights. It's individuals that have rights. But the concept being that a state should be a sort of self-determining entity and that the federal government shouldn't get to cram down its mandates. And now they're doing that with this voting thing where the federal government wants to take over state elections, basically.
Yeah, and the second in the second issue, saying that the government is already infringing too much on states' rights, he's pointing out that the left is having to, it is mostly the left, is having to come out and condemn secession more. So that's a big reason to start taking secession more seriously. If people are taking it seriously enough that they're having to come out and try to make up any type of reason to make it sound like secession is a bad idea, that's how you know they're taking it seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was quoting this guy named Kilgore from New York Magazine, Ed Kilgore, and he says...
And he's against secession, this guy.
Yes, he's a liberal. He says, so might we drift apart more or less peacefully this time around? Possibly, but count me out when it comes to agreeing to a national divorce. Oh, we all need to ask Ed Kilgore if we can do it. How could I happily accept the accelerated subjugation of women and people of color in a new adjacent red America any more than abolitionists could accept the continuation and expansion of the slavery they hated? Would it really be safe to live near a carbon-mad country in which the denial of climate change was an article of faith? And could I ever trust that a neighbor whose leadership and citizens believed their policies reflected the unchanging ancient's will of the Almighty would leave our fences intact? So he's saying, am I really supposed to believe that if there's a Republican state next door to me that they wouldn't attack us?
Well, he's making it sound like he wants to attack them.
Yeah.
Right? He's making it sound like he couldn't live.
He wouldn't let
with
them
that.
do what they wanted to do, yeah.
And I think that he would change his mind real fast when he realized that the Republicans in the state next door are probably going to be way more better armed. Because like they're generally way better armed than the liberals are. But to
Also,
be fair,
of course, he is painting, the average Republican in a light that I would say I don't see with the average Republican.
No,
Just, they want to subject women. I don't see
entirely unfair and ridiculous. But further, I want to make sure it's clear, not every liberal is on this guy's camp, right? There's a bunch of them out in California that are absolutely in favor of secession.
Yeah.
Because they understand they don't want to have a bunch of Republicans telling them what to do either.
Yep, it goes both ways.
And they understand that they're going to have a better livelihood. They're going to have more choices to do the things that they want to do, more self-determination. So when you look, there was a recent study done, I think it was this year, that showed a significant number of West Coast liberals support independence. And actually a decent number of them here in New England support independence as well. So this guy isn't surrounded by liberals that agree with him. There's a lot of them.
He's in
New
York.
Yeah, there's a lot of leftists who want to see secession as well. Anyway, go ahead.
Mises goes on to say, Kilgore can barely contain his contempt. He might as well be saying, if those red state troglodytes are allowed freedom, they'll surely embrace a racist and misogynistic dystopia that fills the air with poisonous fumes. These are religious zealots, after all. Anyone who doesn't...
So are believers in the state. They are also religious zealots. The state is their god.
Anyone who doesn't want to live out his or her life as subject to the whims of men like Kilgore should take his few moments of candor as an ominous warning. These people will never happily accept self-governance outside Washington's purview because they quite literally equate it with slavery and the hatred of women. And that's just the people. I'm pretty sure that the politicians know that that's BS, and the politicians just use that to their favor to keep control. That's what they favor.
Well,
they favor control.
I equate being under the yoke of the federal government as slavery.
Yeah, it's literally slavery of us. It's literally murder of the people that we go to war with senselessly.
And I said that
the United
underneath the
States.
Republican administrations too, just to be clear. I don't want it to sound like I'm some sort of right-winger. It was slavery under Bush, it was slavery under Trump, it was slavery under Obama, and it's slavery now under Biden, and it's never not going to be slavery because the federal government is evil.
The fiat money system has always been a pyramid scheme.
Sure.
In other words, the more the left condemns secession in detail, as they must now do because dismissive scoffing no longer works, they only provide additional reasons for why secession is likely the only real solution to the national divide. Now the third reason. Now is the time to ask the difficult questions. Finally, the mainstreaming of secession means now is the appropriate time to start asking the difficult questions about how separation would actually take place. For example, the issue of nuclear weapons cannot be ignored, although the case of post-Soviet Ukraine shows it's not as intractable a problem as many people suspect. Moreover, the question of the national debt ought to be approached. It will likely also be necessary to admit that under all realistic scenarios, a partial default is the likely outcome either with or without secession.
Yeah, absolutely. And they almost defaulted a couple weeks ago. You know, they almost got to the point where they couldn't pay their debts. And they couldn't pay for the treasury bonds that were coming due. And that deadline got just kicked down the road a couple months. It's coming up again on December 3rd. So they're going to have to do something else. They're going to have to raise the debt ceiling.
Print $1 trillion coin.
Or print $1 trillion coin. More coming up here. If you want to join us, 603-283-6160. And we can continue. Your calls and thoughts are welcome here. This is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20, mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up what you want. In these remaining moments, we have enough time for you. You just have to get on the lines. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Talking about an issue that its time has come. Of course, I thought its time has come, has been around for decades. But finally, people are taking the issue of secession, of states declaring independence from the United States and walking away from this abusive relationship for good. People are starting to take that seriously, and the Mises Institute is weighing in here. Bonnie, we're mostly through this piece, but there's more I think that you want to share?
Yes, with the last of the 3 reasons to take secession more seriously.
All right, let's go.
He was giving examples of lots of big questions that now need to be addressed now that...
Like, what about the military? What about nuclear weapons?
Yep. And he says, In real life, big political changes have a habit of occurring regardless of what the official planners want and what the official plans say.
Right. Look at the Berlin Wall coming down at the end of the Soviet Union. These things happened very quickly, and no one necessarily expected when those things were going to happen.
That is, events have a way of overwhelming what the elites think is the proper way of doing things. But fostering serious discussion now could help avert at least some unpleasant surprises in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, living in denial about secession won't improve things. And of course, the matter of secession is not one of if, but when. All polities... Polities? What? I don't know.
Polities, I think, is like a political designation or something.
All polities come to an end at some point, either through disintegration or revolution. In many cases, the world improves when old states like the Roman Empire collapse. The fanciful America will last forever position is something that should seem plausible only to small children or the hopelessly naive.
Right. That's just not the history of the world. I mean, the history of the world, the history of government money, for instance, is they all fail. All governments fall. All government monies fail. And this government money is on a point of, I don't know if it's a precipice. It's already fallen over the precipice at this point. It's just we don't know how fast they're going to inflate, but they're going to. They're going to keep the inflation coming, and people are going to lose faith in the dollar, and losing faith in the dollar means losing faith in the state, losing faith in the government if they haven't already. So all this stuff is coming. It's just a matter of time at this point. You ready for it?
Oh, yeah. Hope so.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and I'm glad to hear people are discussing this in a serious manner. We're going to definitely keep talking about it here, especially as more developments happen here in New Hampshire. I did mention the story, Bonnie, about Texas earlier tonight, and Austin code enforcement apparently went out to mow the lawn of a home in an upscale neighborhood on Wednesday when, according to MSN.com, bullets began flying from inside the house.
And earlier in the show, we talked about me going to film our friend Lumpy when he went to the code enforcement of Keene's office to give them a piece of his mind. They literally told us, we're not threatening you. He said, you're coming to us, giving us these orders under threat that you'll come grab us and put us in jail. He said, we're not threatening you. This isn't a threat. And then they called the cops on him for talking too loud.
Yeah.
So there was cops surrounding him. Yes, but
clearly they are lying when they say that.
Code enforcement of Austin literally shot somebody.
Well, it wasn't code enforcement that shot him. It was the police.
Well, they probably called the police,
Yeah.
got the police involved.
What began as a routine enforcement of a local ordinance quickly devolved into a 5-hour standoff, say police. By the end of the day, the resident was dead and his house engulfed in flames.
Oh, my God.
So the whole claim behind you got to cut your lawn, you can't let your yard grow beyond 6 inches or whatever. There's some sort of arbitrary length that some city council there in Austin at some point put into the code. And their ostensible reason is beautification, right? They don't want some ugly yard with a bunch of grass growing out of control and rats running in and out of the grass and snakes. And, there's reasons why
it looks much better with blood splatters and
a burnt down house.
Yeah.
Yeah. This wasn't the first trip city officials had made to deal with the unkempt yard on Pinckney Lane. It was an ongoing issue, they said, and officials had tried to fix it several times before. Austin Police Chief Joseph Chacon said during a Wednesday evening news conference, but the problem persisted, which led them to get the warrant, quote, to make sure there wasn't any further safety consideration for that house or for other houses, and go ahead and mow the grass, said the chief. The incident began about 9:15 in the morning when Austin police officers accompanied the city's code enforcement officials. So the cops were there from the beginning to a 2-story home in a neighborhood in the southwestern part of the city. The homeowner's grass was overgrown, and officers were there to serve a warrant that authorized the workers to tame the lawn without the owner's permission. So apparently they need a warrant to just mow the lawn there. Everything was going smoothly until the 1-hour mark when someone inside the house shot at officers, Chacon said. Unscathed, the officers retreated, got other city workers to safety, and called for backup. SWAT team arrived 20 minutes later, along with mental health professionals and a crisis negotiator. The standoff had begun for several hours.
Why wouldn't they just leave? Why wouldn't the answer
They don't
make
know
the most
how-
sense to just leave? I mean, I wouldn't ever shoot at a police officer. I would never say
Well,
that.
first of all, that's what they claim, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So did this guy actually shoot at the cops, or did they say that he shot at the cops?
I'm just saying I don't condone
No, it's not a good
shooting
plan.
at another person for mowing your lawn. But
Right.
if you got shot at because you're on somebody's property mowing their lawn, why wouldn't the smartest thing to do be just leave?
They can't do that, Bonnie, because they're trained to escalate. They're not trained to de-escalate situations. That's what somebody who, wanted to de-escalate a situation would do. They would just leave. They would. Well, of course, they never would have gone in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Like if you actually cared about
With a bunch of
de-escalation,
thugs
right?
in tow.
So they escalated the situation, number one, by showing up there with armed men and forcing unwanted lawn care services on this man. And by the way, I think they bill you for it, if I recall, how these code enforcers work. Is like if they show up and they have to mow your lawn due to some city ordinance.
And it apparently took an hour.
They said, if it's an overgrown lawn, it could absolutely take more than an hour to do that. In fact, it was they were still mowing when the 1 hour mark came around. So for several hours, the police tried to coax the man out of the house, but failed to do so. Around 3:20, the man allegedly fired more shots at officers who were behind his house, and police responded by sending a robot inside. Its camera showed a fire was quickly spreading throughout the house. Now, do you think this guy set his own house on fire?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, what are the odds? Why would you set your own house on fire? I mean, I understand the argument is this man's crazy. He's shooting at police, so maybe he's crazy enough to set his own house on fire. But, they also wanted you to believe that the Waco compound burned down due to the people inside, burning down the compound on themselves. And the conspiracy theory is, and I think there's, a lot of good evidence for it, that the federal government burned down the Waco compound, that they lit the fires. Because again, why would you burn down your own home on yourself?
Why would you take trophy pictures in front of the burned down Waco buildings if you didn't do it yourself? Like you're all proud of it.
More gunshots. For the next 20 minutes, police kept trying to convince the man to come out, even as the blaze inside was growing. The chief said, thinking the flames and smoke had killed the man, police had city firefighters advance to extinguish the blaze, but their hunch was wrong. At 3:39, the garage
Wait, so
door...
they didn't go in and save him? They were just waiting for it to kill him?
Yeah, pretty much. At the garage door opened and the man stepped out with weapons in hand, said the chief. A SWAT officer who's been with Austin police for 8 years shot the man. He collapsed to the ground after disarming him. Officers tried to save him. I bet they didn't try real hard. And he later died at the hospital. Police would not identify him, describing him as being in his 50s, saying they would release his name only when they'd notified the next of kin.
We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you.
Stop
You just want us to
resisting.
leave? We're trying to help you.
The Austin Code Department received 2 complaints regarding the property in 2020 and handled 3 separate cases about it this year. In April, one of those cases went before an administrative judge who fined the owner when he didn't appear at the hearing. In March, the city cut the grass and weeds on the property without a problem. On August, they notified the owner he'd violated the code by letting the grass grow more than a foot tall and ordered him to cut them within a week. Failure to correct the condition by the above deadline may result in city action to clean the property at your expense. And boy, was it at his expense. Now he's dead. And now the house is a burned out husk. So I hope his neighbors are happy. I mean, I hope his neighbors who called the police about this man and snitched on him to the code enforcement department are happy. Because now the blood's on their hands as far as I'm concerned. They called the cops in on this man, and the cops did what cops do. They escalated the situation until a peaceful man who had not harmed anyone is now dead.
They're painting the grass red. They're painting the grass red.
Out of time for tonight. You can join us tomorrow night online. In the meantime, over at freetalklive.com. We have a lot of features there, including our Matrix chat server, which you can get interactive with other Free Talk Live listeners anytime, day or night. Head over to chat.freetalklive.com to do that. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others?